So when we met Ashoka, we learned that the story of art depends on the patrons, the people with the money to make the art happen. So it's like in a murder mystery novel, right? The rule in a murder mystery is you look for the suspect who has the means and the motive. Ashoka had the means and the motive to fund the carving and construction of pillars and rock adix. We also learned that in his time, early Buddhist art was monumental and aniconic. It avoided figurative representations. So we saw at the great stupa, the Torana, carved with scenes of the great departure, no imagery of Buddha. Of course, we've all seen images of the Buddha. These days, you can even get a sculpture of the Buddha at a garden store. So just for fun, I Googled Buddha garden statue, and you can look at the array of statues. So they all go back to this period that we are about to study. So here's a kind of layout, that's a timeline layout of what we've been studying. And we've seen the earliest Buddhist artworks, and then here, around 100 CE to 200 CE, we start to have surviving figurative sculpture of the Buddha. So interesting. Why do we start to see the Buddha depicted in figurative sculpture? What's happening? These kinds of changes generally involve multiple factors. And by the point 100 to 200 CE, Buddhism had been around for about 500 years and was expanding to include more deified conceptions of the Buddha. But also political and social changes were important. So South Asia was more and more engaged in foreign trade and cross-cultural exchange. And one patron in particular, who is a foreigner to South Asia, will be an important force in the development of Buddhist sculpture. And that's King Kanishka, who is represented in this sculpture, but it doesn't tell you very much because his head has broken off. So like Ashoka, he is one of the major patrons of Buddhist art, and it is the culture of his political world that stimulates the production of Buddhist figurative images. He is actually from northwest China, and you can tell that because he's wearing this heavy cloak and these boots that no one who is in hot South Asia would want to wear. But they had been forced, they were a nomadic people, so like the Aryans, they were migratory. They had been forced out of southwest China, and during their wanderings, they had captured Bactria, an important region of Central Asia, roughly today's Afghanistan, around 130 BCE. They were also very cosmopolitan in their outlook. So what's interesting about Kanishka is he has coins stamped, and for the region that he controls, which is very much at the crossroads of the Silk Road of China, of Iran, and further west, the Roman Empire, and of South Asia. And he has those coins stamped with many different kind of sacred images of the different kinds of peoples in his cosmopolitan realm. So he has coins stamped with the Buddha, a standing Buddha here. Also with Shiva, the Hindu god that we'll be studying with his bull Nandi. Also with Greek gods. His political stance is to be able to rule in a cosmopolitan world by embracing diversity. So his Kushan Empire becomes a kind of incubator for the development of Buddhist figurative sculpture. And there are two key sites. So one is in the northwest, Gandara, right here, and one is in Mathura, in central India. So one is more connected to today's Pakistan and Iran, to the kind of Persian world, the Central Asian world, and one more in the heartland of the Ganges River culture. Here are two early examples of those two styles from each of the regions. So on the left, the Gandara style uses a dark gray stone called schist. That's its most defining, recognizable feature. Whereas on the right, the Mathura style also recognizable by the kind of stone used, a red sandstone. So similar to what you saw used by Ashoka, the artists who made Ashoka's pillars. It's interesting to think back to the 2nd century, so circa 100 to 200 CE, Common Era. And imagine if you were the stone carver who has the job of creating a sculpture of the Buddha. Remember, no one had at that time laid eyes on the Buddha for 500 years. So your job is, without knowing what the Buddha looked like, to create a vision that will feel true to what the Buddha means to people. So when you work to create this image of the Buddha, you're not going to have a lot of choice, stone carver, about what exactly you put in there in terms of iconography, right? Remember our idea of symbols, because there is a standard set of identifying symbols that are the iconography of the Buddha. So for instance, you might look here at this circular form. This might look like, a bun, the hair bun. No, it's not. It's an ushnisha. It is a bump on the head, a way of visualizing the idea of an expanded and enhanced mind. Also, Buddha always has elongated earlobes, which indicate that as a prince, he had worn dangly, expensive, heavy jewelry, and he took them off to become a renunciate. So the lobes show us the removal of that kind of luxury and privilege. Traditionally, the Buddha is said to have a golden body and to have elongated arms reaching to the knees, which are often likened to elephant trunks. And the artist of this Gandara style Buddha is definitely, I think, evoking the elephant trunk arms. Another key iconography element is the urna. There's the mark between the eyebrows, and as well, it's very difficult. You can't see it at all in this sculpture, and it's difficult to see in the photo, but here on the soles of the feet and on the palms are chakras. So sacred marks on the body that identify the Buddha, as the awakened one. So those elements are set, and we can't really distinguish Gandara and Mathura style by talking about symbolism, because it's a style. So we want to look here and think, well, what did each of these respective sculptors try to do? And it's interesting to ask yourself, is there one that feels more appropriate to you if you were purchasing a sculpture of the Buddha for your Buddhist Sangha, for your temple in 100, 200, which would you choose? Which would seem right, and why? So the Gandara style is understood to be in dialogue with the art of the Greek and Roman West, because it is positioned on the crossroads, on the Silk Road, where Greece and Rome were engaging very closely with people in that Central Asian region. So the naturalistic folds, meaning, is it naturalistic being a term in art history, that the folds give the illusion that we're looking at real folds, like that's what they mean by natural, like actual folds rather than carved folds. It's an illusion of real life. There's a rippling quality. And I'm comparing the Gandara seated Buddha here to a Roman marble carving of the family of Emperor Augustus. So you can see how their, wonderfully carved, swooping, flowing robes are similar, where this piece almost really feels like cloth, right? To be able to transform stone into cloth. And then also very defined anatomical details, so that we sort of feel the pectoralis muscles of the chest, right? And the hair has a distinctive texture. The everything from the eyebrows to the nose to the lips are very precisely carved. So the Mathura style, interestingly, draws from the Yaksha tradition. So it's, in general, in art, the new is built out of the old. Old elements, it's like in evolution biologically, old elements are adapted and transformed to become something new. So the Yaksha, who's, virtually nude, except for, these awesome piece of decorative embellishments, is a figure of kind of the prime magnificence of the male figure. And that's been infused into this image of Buddha. This stone carver is thinking that, well, I'm going to present Buddha as having those qualities that the yaksha has, the nature spirit, the broad shoulders, which suggest a depth of breathing, as well as a kind of bodily energy and alertness. And then over time, what happens is those two styles, in a sense, feed into a third alternative, which will be called the Gupta style, that kind of harmonizes and balances those two possibilities. So I'm showing you the Gandara style, and I'm comparing it to a Greek sculpture of Apollo, because scholars see the Gandara style as kind of building on the Greek god of Apollo, who's a god of light and wisdom and reason. And then I'm wanting you to see how that tradition of the yaksha is still evident in the kind of broad shoulders of this Gupta style, the vitality. But there's a kind of a softness and a calm that happens here that the previous Mathura style did not have. The Gupta style emerges in the Gupta period, so it's named after a dynasty, a ruling dynasty's period, a period of great artistic and cultural achievement. And it is exquisitely beautiful in a way that has a beautiful balance between the idea of a realistic, anatomically present figure and a vibrant, energetic figure. We talk about the Gupta style Buddha as being a canonical or classical, which means kind of the one that sets the standard, that gets followed for centuries and millennia. In fact, if you look at those garden statues, many of them are based on the Gupta style. So it's a style that becomes the traditional style, the way of perceiving the Buddha. And international influence, we will see its influence in China. Going back to the idea of sensory description and formal analysis, your textbook authors do a really nice job demonstrating those skills in order to help you see why this is such an extraordinarily beautiful vision that has such lasting impact. The body, clearly visible through the clinging robe, is graceful and slight, with broad shoulders and a well-proportioned torso. Only a few lines of the garment at the neck, waist, and hems interrupt the purity of its subtly shaped surfaces. The face, smooth and ovoid. I think there is something about the kind of smooth, ovoid quality, the sense of kind of circles embedded in the convincing bodily form, and the smoothness of the forms and the simplicity that in a way actually is a metaphor for the state of mind of calm and openness. One last word, the gesture. The textbook uses the language Buddha preaching his first sermon. To me, that sounds way too Judeo-Christian to really do justice to what this means in the context of Buddhism. So the actual precise meaning is he's setting the wheel of the Dharma in motion, those fingers. And that is one of many mudras that you must know that actually express specific ideas in Buddhism. The ones you must know are absolutely the Dharma chakra, turning the wheel of the law, setting the wheel of the Dharma in motion. This is the mudra of meditation. If you just try it out, put your hands down, thumbs touching, there's a kind of grounded quality and there's an openness in that space that the thumbs make, which is very appropriate for meditation. It facilitates it. This is a very important one. The Buddhist gesture of the hand upraised, open hand, have no fear. And then the moment when the Buddha attains enlightenment and says, "As the earth is my witness."